Hello, welcome to Ask GMBN Tech, where we try and answer your mountain bike related questions. Have we got any?
We do, because people use hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments of any of our videos, and then we can find them. And I've got one here from Any Given Bike, nice name, who says, are inner tubes really that bad for mountain biking?
Well, you can run them.
Not that bad.
Feel free to run them.
Yeah, they're not that bad. Okay, so I see the benefits of using tubes, because obviously if you need to take your tyre off and put a new tube in there, it's pretty mess-free, isn't it? You take a tube out, you put one in. TPU or fancy latex tubes can be really light, sometimes lighter than sealant. But we've got to remember the reason that sealant came about is, well, the clue's in the title, isn't it? It's sealing punctures. The real benefit from sealant is that usually it will fix like tiny little holes by itself. Yeah. I had one yesterday. I didn't even know I had a puncture until I saw a little dot of sealant on my tyre, and it just sealed itself immediately. And you know that if it had been a bigger hole, for example, not just a thorn or a little bit of, tiny hole, if it was bigger, often you can get those tyre plugs and just shove them in. Yeah. You're not even taking the wheel out, let alone the tyre off.
That's where I would argue that actually tubes can be messy, because if you puncture out on the cross-country ride in the middle of winter, you've then got to take the tyre off and get covered in mud. Granted, tubeless, when it comes to change a tyre or something, there's I've got a bit of a system now where I try and scoop out the old stuff, recycle it if I can. Sometimes it's beyond, it's thrown away. But then I hose it down straight away, because if you let it dry out, then it is pretty horrible stuff. Yeah. But if you do it the right way, I think the advantages outweigh disadvantages by a mile. But also, like you say, I can't remember the last time where I damaged a tyre bad enough that I couldn't just fix it with a plug.
No.
And rarely do I do that.
If you're putting a tube in when you've got tubeless sealant setup, it's a catastrophic failure, isn't it? In which case, you're going to be in all world of trouble with an inner tube as well. Remember
the days of going for big epic rides and having to take 2 tubes and sometimes using
minimum.
Both of those.
Yeah, I remember the days that I used to go through maybe 2 tubes in a ride, and now I can tell you, I don't think I've changed a proper puncture fix twice in a year, if that. So that's why people have moved to sealant. There can be an expense issue. I think it's marginal. So I did a bit of maths. If you bought a 1 litre bottle of PT sealant for £30, 100 mils will do a 29 a wheel, which means it's £3 a tyre. And tubes cost 4 to 5. The only downside is with the sealant, you have to refresh it technically every 6 months. I probably do it maybe once a year. And you might not be refreshing a tube, so it might be cheaper when it comes to tubes. But, it's horses for courses. So is it that bad? No, but I prefer sealant.
I would measure it out as well. I'm not very accurate with measuring.
You just pour
and
it
then
in.
Sometimes you do a jump and you feel the front wheel. No, I should have put less in probably, but save some money there as well.
There you go.
On to next question from Miles Songs. What might cause my rear SRAM Level TL brake to return slowly? So the brake lever, squeeze in, it doesn't snap back. The symptom led me to try a bleed. I noticed the piston's not activating well, but a good clean and bleeding the line got them going. But that lever still doesn't spring back as quickly as the other.
Right, fun thing about maintenance is it could be loads of things.
I would say
figure it out.
Except for it being a SRAM. I would have
You're going to put money on it.
The old SRAM levers, they've changed them now, but there used to be a symptom of this piston inside the lever. Apparently it used to expand, so they would quite often feel like that. They'd stop rebounding as snappy as that. But fortunately, you can replace them, and as soon as you've done that, it should feel like new as well. So, if you're thinking of other systems, if it wasn't a SRAM, I would maybe look at everything. You've got to find, where there could be friction, like the pistons on the calipers potentially, but I would, definitely, that would be my first port of call, to get a service kit to replace that piston. It's not very much money, and hopefully it'll make your brake lever feel lovely and fresh.
Yeah, it could. So anyone with other brands as well, sometimes the return spring on it that returns the lever can get weak or damaged, and that might need replacing. And like you said, the pistons could get sticky as well. The best way to sort of try and identify what the problem is, try and isolate it. So you could take all of the fluid out of the system and take the hose off and then actuate the lever. And that way you know if it's the lever that's the problem or if it's something else. If the lever's fine, for example, then you want to move down to the caliper end and start listening for crunchy noises when the pistons are moving.
Older Shimano levers were a bit of a killer for this as well, and they weren't as serviceable. So hopefully you can get it feeling good. Right, Alan Bustle7894 says, Ask GMBN Tech. I'm just building up a Scout 275 by robbing bits off another bike. The donor bike has a Shimano BB52 bottom bracket, but I decided to upgrade with an MT-800. The MT-800 doesn't cover all the face of the BB shell. Does this matter?
Right, BBs are so complicated. Not only have you got to have the right press fit versus threaded, but you've also got to have the right circumference, you've got to have the right length as well. I did a bit of research, the BB52 and the MT500 and the MT501, which is a slightly modern version of the 500. They should be the same, but we don't know whether you've got the right length or not. So the question is, the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we don't know if you are saying that it's too long because you might have had the wrong length, so your old bike might be a different length to the new bike, or if you're saying that the interface isn't the right
Yeah, I wonder
diameter.
if you mean the diameter isn't covering the BB shell. Well, that doesn't matter. It's more about that it's flush within the cups either side of the frame, I suppose. But yeah.
Head to the website, yeah, or your user manual, if you can find it online, usually you can. They always say, what is the BB for the new bike?
Right, on to Heafy97. How do I check my derailleur if it's bent? I got a punch on my derailleur, a GX Eagle. It was bent strongly. I changed the hanger. It shifts better again, but not perfect. I'm not 100% sure if the derailleur itself is bent too. How can I check this best?
Yeah, I mean...
It's such a difficult one to answer because actually the new transmission stuff looks bent on purpose. It doesn't look straight from new. Most mechs, you just have to eyeball it, don't you? You look down the cage compared to, once we run in parallel with the spokes, but obviously the spokes are doing a little bit of that. But it's normally, you can tell, sometimes it'll twist a bit, so actually it's kind of parallel that way, but not that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've done it with mechs where you haven't necessarily bent the cage, you've almost just put friction into the kind of parallelogram system, so it's not quite returning as it should.
Oh, right, yeah.
If it's working, then I would say it's probably not bent, but if it's a bit shaky on one gear or the other up and down the cassette, then maybe it is a bit bent.
Yeah, I mean, if you've hit it hard enough that you've bent your derailleur hanger, you might have bent the derailleur as well. It's quite likely. And what it'll do is that lower arm will just move it slightly off the chain line in your cassette. So you can potentially start tuning the derailleur to get it back in line, and it might run fine. It might just be knocked out of line at the moment and you can put it right. So do try that first, and if that is not working, if you can't tune it back into line, then yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend bending it back because you don't know where straight is, do you?
I'm sure I've probably tried it, but I've seen limited success with trying to bend back a rear mech. Because also you could end up just bending your hanger if you're not careful, the brand new hanger you've just bought. So very
good point.
Yeah, who knows?
Okay, my next question from Die for Nothing Gaming says, how slack is too slack for a hardtail? Is hardtail head angle is currently 63 degrees. Is that too slack?
I mean, that's downhill bike territory, isn't it?
It is,
Does it get much slacker than 63? I don't know. I mean, for me, I would probably think it is a little bit, but then if your weight's in the right place, depends on your style of riding. For me, I would worry about getting enough weight on the front tyre so that when I was bombing, that I would wash out, but it's going to make it feel pretty stable, obviously going fast, but depends how much travel your fork has got. Hardtails are sort of, got that notorious dip. If you've got a really long travel fork, the BB ends up so low, rather than, both ends going in, you end up with this kind of weird feeling. So I would say it's probably okay, to be honest, but...
I mean, it's horses for courses, isn't it? Too slack is just, if it's not working out for you, then it is too slack. Some people, I know a lot of hardtail riders who actually run a lot of sag in their forks, so if you run more sag, you're dipping into suspension more, and that will steepen up all of the angles. So some run it like that, and you might actually have a head degree angle of 64 or maybe even 65 once you've done that. It depends, but you can get some headset cups that do adjust this. So maybe that's something you want to look into if you do think that it's too slack.
Nate Phillips, 9765. I'm in the market for a new pair of riding shorts, preferably with padding. Do you have any brand recommendations?
Do we?
Well, GMBN shorts are very good.
Yeah, obviously. But if you're not buying GMBN, the problem is every bum is different. It really is. This is like recommending a pair of shoes because people's feet are different and sizing is different and needs are different as well.
What I would say is, I would buy them separately, so I would wear like a chamois and then my shorts on top. In fact, I actually wear riding trousers more than anything nowadays. But I've got my favourite set of chamois shorts that I will stick with. And I would say the ones you probably get, if you get them with the shorts, aren't very good. Personally, I love getting a set of quite fancy, probably quite expensive road
I do
inners,
road as well.
and then I'll just use those. They're brilliant for longer rides. If I'm riding shorter, it doesn't matter quite so much. I'll ride whatever under shorts, but buy them separately, I would probably say.
Yeah, and I've got to say, because I've had sort of high-end road or XC pads for some time, and to be honest, I've run them for years. So, okay, they will be more expensive, but I think they last a lot longer as well. And the only real way for you to find out what's best for you is to maybe go to bike stores and try some on. You can do that and just get a feel for what the sizing is like and what the brands are like. And that should hopefully guide you in the right direction. But that's all we've got time for now. And if you have any burning questions right now, then use hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments right now, and myself, Neil, or someone else will try and pick it up and answer it for you.
And if you've got a burning bum, change your shorts.
Thanks. Goodbye.